presentation.
That's gonna be fun.
Oh boy.
Wait, is this in the episode? Or is this?
Yeah, cut that out of the episode.
And sound of the VHS tape going in.
I'm really excited to talk about this movie.
I am too, because I actually don't know what you guys think. Okay, let's start proper.
Take us in, Frank.
Hey guys, welcome to No Flicks Given for movie 3 of our Halloween miniseries, our Campfire Series, basically.
Campfire Series.
So, Campfire Series. No Matt Conrad today. He is unfortunately fallen under the weather. But I've got Peter and Connor here, and we're here to discuss my pick. But Matt's already seen this movie, and we've already talked about it, so it's okay. For movie 3, I went with as unconventional a vampire movie as I could think of, which is 1988's Lair of the White Worm.
Fishing in the winter. He caught a fish up on his hook. He thought looked mighty queer. Now what the kind of fish it was, John Dumpton couldn't tell. But he didn't like the look of it, so he threw it down a well.
I'll start with Peter. What did you think of Lair of the White Worm?
I was so confused at the beginning, but ended up really enjoying it. Like this is such a B horror. I've seen it described online as like a horror comedy, and I don't know if I see the comedy so much, but you definitely see like the schlocky, not quite grindhouse, but like definitely there's a lot of content in here to raise hackles and to this is a midnight picture, like in a very fun way, I think. But my big question, and I don't know if we want to get into this immediately, but is this actually a vampire movie?
Okay, we'll get to that. But Connor, what did you think of Lair of the White Worm?
I was looking at my notes before we sat down to record. And my second note here says, is a question. Is this movie a bit?
I think it's a bit. I think the whole movie's a bit.
It almost feels like a Monty Python bit at the very beginning.
5 notes down. Yes, it is.
Do you remember what moment of the movie?
I don't. I wish I did. This is another one that I'm pissed I didn't take the time to watch it or have the time to watch it twice.
Yes.
But for me, the first time it feels like a bit, I remember exactly when, is the weird little party at the pub where
the castle,
wherever they are, where they like almost enact the movie, where Hugh Grant like fake cuts the white worm in half, and then they're like eating what looks to be like, it's like worms, like just like nonchalantly, right at the buffet table, very strangely.
I believe that was when I wrote down, is this movie a bit? Because there's so much business. Hugh Grant is just doing so much business in that scene.
Hugh Grant's also like how young he is, and yet he's so fully formed as the Hugh Grant we know and love. It is, I'll say, having seen this the 3 times now, the comedy part of the horror comedy really comes to the forefront the more times you watch it. Because like I'm with you. The first time you watch it, it takes a while to like dial in to what is happening. Because like you're like, okay, is this weird or is it British? Like you're
And it turns out it's both.
It's both.
Do we know if has Mystery Science Theater done this? Because this feels
I could see,
like
I'm not
a
aware.
good
Probably
candidate.
not, though.
I mean, it's not that bad, but like you could see them getting into this.
You know
sure.
what this movie reminded me of was Dracula Dead and Loving It. That's the Mel Brooks, Leslie Nielsen Dracula movie.
Yes.
In that, Dracula Dead and Loving It purports to be a Dracula spoof movie, but what it winds up being is like 85 to 90% just a straight up Dracula movie that occasionally has jokes.
Yeah.
The layer of the White Worm is that, but inversed, where they are making a serious vampire movie, but at the same time they're making a spoof of every other vampire movie.
Yeah.
We're like, if you're just watching it straight, it's just it's a sort of schlocky 1980s horror film with some weird ideas in it. But if there was a moment, and I forget, I think it was when Hugh Grant is doing all of the worm business during like the plot dump with Peter Capaldi at the party, where I realized like, oh, the people that are making this movie think this movie is fucking hilarious and are having a fantastic time. They're just not telling the audience that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure because there's a lot of like, we can get into sort of like how British films handle sex and like the forefrontness that they'll sort of present their innuendos. But beyond that too, I feel like there's sort of like a little bit. I'm curious what a British person sees watching this, like how clearly it is a straightforward comedy to someone who's sort of dialed in more to like the nuance of kind of their wordplay and stuff like that. Because you see some of it, but it's also like, I mean, it's 1988. Like this is an era where like I don't know a lot of full-on British films from the 80s.
So
like
reading some feedback from the director, Ken Russell, apparently it was never really received well in Britain. People took it at its face value. They didn't really see it was funny, but it has cult status basically everywhere else. Like apparently this movie has a fairly large cult status following in Australia, which makes a lot of sense, I think. So I don't think it ever really landed with British audiences at all.
So that makes it even more confounding that it's not even like in tune with its own island.
Should we talk about like what happens in this movie? Well, yeah. What is this movie about, Frank?
I was gonna try to do it, but it will sound like a fever dream, and it will kind of sound like I'm making it up.
Yeah.
Essentially, it is. God, I don't even know. I don't want to even go straight up linearly, but like there are. I'm really trying to find what part of the plot to latch onto to start swinging through it.
You want me to take a swing?
Yeah, where do you even start?
I would start from the beginning because so the movie opens up with Peter Capaldi, who plays a Scottish archaeologist named Angus Flint, and he finds and gets really excited about this weird skull that he finds on an archaeological dig. And the skull is this like head of a giant snake, basically. And he starts talking about sort of myth and the legend of this white worm that was in the area. And it was weird because this was supposedly the ruins of a convent. Come to find out later that it was the ruins of a convent that were built over the ruins of a pagan temple from like Roman times. And that temple was the house of like this immortal lady. What's her name? Evelyn? Lady Sylvia Marsh.
Sylvia, yeah.
Yeah, Lady Sylvia. That happens to be like next door neighbors to Hugh Grant. And she is this immortal, like, disciple of this worm god, which happens to be a literal giant worm that lives beneath, like, the general area that they're in England. Yeah. And it just leads to them trying to figure out what's happening and a lot of people dying and some anytime you like get bit or touch this venom that she secretes from her fangs, you get like acid flashbacks into like Roman times, I guess. There's a lot of very sexual religious imagery in this movie. Yeah. And you know, some folks get bitten and killed and almost sacrificed to the white worm. And at the very end of the movie, They defeat the lady. They blow up the white worm with a hand grenade, which is hilarious, because Peter Capaldi pulls a hand grenade from nowhere underneath his kilt.
He pulls it out of his sport. If we need a lesson on kilt accoutrement, I can give that to you.
We might. They defeat the white worms with the power of bagpipes and a hand grenade.
I did love where the hand grenade, even though his other hand is right there and free, he still had to grab it with his teeth and pull the pin out. Like, that's the only way to pull the pin out of a grenade.
Especially in 1988.
Also realizing now he also had that woodchuck in his kilt.
It was a mongoose.
With the grenade, I guess. I don't know. Well, we can.
That was also weird. Yeah,
it's an early Doctor Who reference.
That is like very broad strokes the stuff that happens in this movie. There are some damsels in distress that get rescued. They're sisters, right?
They're sisters.
Yeah, Eve and
yeah.
Mary. Yeah, and at the very, very end, when you think all is well, but you kind of know it's not well because apparently Peter Capaldi off screen went to develop an anti-venom, but was accidentally given arthritis medication. So when he thinks everything is well, he himself turns into a vampire, and the movie just ends.
So much happens off screen in this movie. It's kind of
A lot happens off screen.
A lot.
Well,
happens
also,
off screen.
It's kind of one.
Hugh
That's one of those
Grant's
things.
whole-
That's one of those things where it's like, is this movie a bit? Because half of the movie is taking place on the other side of a phone call.
I just love the like. It feels like a very British way of doing it, where like someone picks up the phone and then it just cuts to the other end, and you hear the entire conversation from just that person's point of view, rather than they never really intercut both people. You'll only just kind of hear one side, and it's that classic like the person doesn't leave enough time between their lines for the conversation to actually be able to happen.
It's really bad phone acting. Yes.
I liked Hugh Grant's character's backstory. Basically, he just inherited this whole region. He is, the son. He's basically like some British lord or whatnot. His family's story is they became famous hundreds and hundreds of years ago. One of his ancestors supposedly slayed the white worm, which is like the white worm's a local legend. Kind of like slaying, like who's the saint that slayed the dragon?
George.
Saint George. Okay. Basically that. So he is
Very on
My
brand.
confirmation
descendant.
name.
It's
You're
very
welcome.
on brand
Yeah.
for both of us to know that, Pete.
Well, do it.
Yeah.
How many years of Catholic school for you, Connor?
16.
Yeah, I got 12 under my belt. So yeah, we got that covered.
Oh boy. Now I'm just picturing the skirts.
Ah.
So basically, yeah, he is the opening party scene is sort of like a reenactment of the classic sort of like slicing the worm in half. And it was supposedly just like a fairy tale kind of thing, but then throughout the course of the movie, you discover no, there's actually a gigantic worm. Snakes, like basically he says early on like the word worm is derived from the same thing that the word dragon, the
Verm,
word snake.
yeah.
It's all kind of like one serpentine creature.
Wyvern, the dragons from Game of Thrones. The
Wyvern. Do you know the
Yeah.
difference between a dragon and a wyvern? I've learned this recently.
The wyvern
One
is-
has
just
legs,
has the
one doesn't.
wings
Yeah.
for arms, and dragons
Instead of
have-
front, yeah.
Dragons
Yeah.
have 4 legs. And the white worm legend from the book is based on a real thing. It's based on a real legend in the north of England.
No, real thing. Yeah.
Well,
The Lambton worm, Lambton worm.
yeah,
From County Durham in northeast England.
Bram Stoker basically transposed the names of where the places were and sort of wrote a story around that.
I kind of want to read the story. I honestly just kind of like saw that quick and I'm like, oh, are they like making a joke about this is the loosest connection to a Dracula legend ever? But I honestly, that's on me for just assuming Bram Stoker never, ever, ever wrote anything else.
Why would you need to? No, it was the
It's like
last.
saying Stephen King just wrote Carrie.
Yeah.
It was the last book he wrote. He wrote it in 1911, and he died the next year.
Oh, wow. So is that bad?
And it is very I haven't read it myself. I just sort of read through the Wikipedia page, but having been a big Dracula fan for a lot of my life, it seems like it's riffing on a lot of the same ideas as Dracula, but
Yeah.
sort of transposing this other local legend on top of it.
Well, let's get into it then if we want to ask whether or not this is a vampire movie, because they do say the word vampire. They do call them vampires. They don't really
they look like vampires. They've got the
generally
big
look like
fangs.
vampires.
They do have snake eyes.
and also snake-like fangs. I've never seen a vampire movie that kind of like has them
Yeah, they're spaced
come
out
out.
wider. Yeah.
a little wider and they're like straight down.
And they're super
it's
long,
honestly, it's
too.
really unnerving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super long. And also they don't seem to. Sunlight has no effect.
Nope.
Mirrors have no effect. It's like it's very.
And they're not.
But
I
they
don't
are
know.
seduced by music.
Yes, that's a whole great piece. That's one of my favorite parts is when he rigs up his whole house to be like a snake charmer lore and pulls her in.
He's got the amps on the roof of his manor.
It's so great.
Like
He's
blasting
basically
music. Yeah.
I
I
love
love that
when-
his house is basically like Wayne Manor.
Yes.
Well, and that he basically has an Alfred and whose name is
Yeah.
Peters, and Peters running through all of the things that he has done in the last probably like 20 minutes to get prepared
Off screen.
to be off screen to turn the castle
Again.
into a snake charm trap. Is fucking the guy that plays the butler is a genius. I have no idea who he is.
He's fun.
But
He's so funny.
Every line is delivered beautifully.
He's always, I don't know, he always finds a way to like, his eyes are always looking in the wrong place, but it's also the funniest place. If you watch any scene with him, he's never really looking at what he's supposed to be looking at, and it just enhances the whole
Which
thing.
I could not tell if that was like a character choice to like tell us
idea.
something, but he's always looking in the wrong place. It is a really weird thing.
I don't get how he feels about anything that's happening in the entire film. I feel like we got to talk about Lady Sylvia a bit because she's kind of like, as much, even though Peter Capaldi and Hugh Grant are in this movie, I think she kind of steals.
She absolutely
absolutely.
steals.
Yeah.
Well, and do you know who they originally wanted to play that role?
88, Isabella Rossellini.
The director originally approached Tilda Swinton to play that role,
Oh wow.
Wow.
which she turned down.
How old was she at that point?
Tilda Swinton in 88? She is currently
She couldn't have been much more than 30.
she's currently 63. So she was born in 1960, so she would have been
28.
28.
Oh, I forgot to edit all that out. We could have just cut right to it. I didn't do it. Damn it. Okay, that's funny. Do you know who I forget the actress's name who's actually Lady Sylvia, but do you know what she's from? Or one thing she's from that we've all seen?
Amanda Donahoe?
Yeah. Does anyone know plays an American in this in the 90s? Don't look it up. Just
I have no
recognize
idea.
her from anything. She is Jim Carrey's boss in Liar Liar.
Oh.
Huh.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I would
And
have
also
never,
great in that.
Never in a million years would have made
There's
that.
probably some other stuff we've seen her in because she's so great and she's having so much fun in this.
Starship Troopers 3.
No.
But in nothing else that I've ever heard of.
Her whole everything she wears is crazy. That like
insane.
white colonial. She's got like a She starts the movie in like a tri-cornered hat, and there's no explanation for it at all.
She looks like she could be in the very start of the movie. She looks like she could be a character out of Assassin's Creed, out of any of the games.
Yeah, basically.
And then by the end, she's basically Mystique from X-Men.
She does go into Mystique, and then in the middle
in that
there,
she's naked in
also-
blue. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
And has red hair,
essentially.
right?
I think so.
Maybe?
Yeah, she's and is very terrifying through most of the movie. I mean, I feel like the first moment that I like perked up the first time I watched it was when she walks past a crucifix and then turns back and like hisses venom at it for
Yeah,
just out of spite.
In the most chill, low key home invasion robbery
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
During
where
the
she's just
day.
like, this is my house now, and I'm going to take this skull, and I'm going to take this watch. And although she didn't,
Yeah.
So did anybody else get confused by this? I thought she took the watch with her.
Oh no,
when
I don't
she stole
think
the
she took.
skull.
I thought she just took the skull, but I meant
Yeah.
to say.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was early enough on in the movie that I was having trouble just trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. Like, she was obviously, I think we knew she was, well, that was the first reveal that we knew for sure she was a vampire or whatever.
And what a crazy low key, like, toss off reveal of who the monster in the movie is. It's just sort of like, this lady's been kind of weird. Okay, she's broken into this house because she knows people are gone. She stole the skull in a really weirdly, beautifully shot sequence where, like, she enters the room and the lens is so wide angle that it looks like it's like a forced perspective, like the skull is in a bed and is humongous on the bottom of the frame. And then she goes and, like, grabs it and her hands become humongous. And then the camera tilts up and you see the ceiling. Some really inventive camera work in this movie. And not like we couldn't afford to do it the right way, so we're kludging something together kind of way. It feels like that's on purpose.
Well, and a mixture of really good and not so good special effects.
Yes.
Like, I think by and large, a lot of the transformation effects, or at least the reveals of the transformed people, is really good. Like, I think a lot of the eye stuff really works for me, where they look like snake eyes. Although I have to imagine those contacts were uncomfortable as fuck. The fangs look great for everybody.
What doesn't look good to you?
The one thing that I'm thinking of, so there's a scene kind of towards the end of the movie where it's revealed that the like town policeman is under the control of Lady Sylvia. Yeah. And his death reveal, so he's the one that gets seduced by Peter Capaldi playing the bagpipes.
I remember the
And he
shot,
gets pushed back onto a sundial and gets, like, impaled through his eye on the sundial. And the reveal of, like, his eye, like, perfectly placed on the tip of the sundial, I was kind of like, okay. That was really the biggest one that I was like, that doesn't look great.
I know the actual white worm at the end doesn't look great, but at that point I am so happy that there is an actual giant worm in this movie that I don't care. Like, were you guys crossing your fingers? You're like, please tell me this ends with a gigantic monster.
I didn't know how it couldn't.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was going to be like a forced perspective sock puppet.
Yeah, I didn't know if I trusted the movie to actually be able to go for it.
And they made the white worm out of the hood of a Volkswagen Beetle. So it was to scale.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
It does not look like that in the movie. It looks a lot it looks a lot like a sock puppet.
The mouth looks weirdly soft when it's like opening its mouth.
Yeah.
It looks like weirdly comfortable. It's like, yeah, I could fall into that. That looks okay.
I mean, it looks kind of like that monster in Empire Strikes Back when they land in the asteroid.
Oh, in the asteroid.
And it's
clearly
this is the thing about Star Wars that I love, but it's clearly a guy under a table with his arm through a puppet, just sort of goes up and over. I got very much that monster vibes from the White Worm.
The sandworms from Beetlejuice.
Yeah, very much that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other effect I really liked was how effective when Hugh Grant cuts that woman in half, her two body parts, which I think is just like two women. Yeah. Like, it's basically like just a classic like magician trick in the floor. But it the way it's like lit and angled, it looks fantastic.
And performance.
It does look really good.
A lot of this stuff gets sold in performance, and and the woman playing the mom cut in half really sell. Like, I'm assuming the top half of that duo really sells the sort of like bug that's cut in half but doesn't realize it yet kind of thing. You know, where all the acting is technically really proficient. You know, like if you don't have to sell a lot of the dialogue, which is not fantastic, or have to have a phone call. But that kind of like super technical acting is really, really well done, especially by the cockeyed cop. What's his name?
I've seen him in so many things. I feel like he shows up in some Edgar Wright movies at some point.
His name is Paul Brook. He was in Bridget Jones' Diary. He was in the Jude Law vehicle Alfie. He was in the movie production of The Phantom of the Opera.
He was in Return of the Jedi. I wonder who he was in Return of the Jedi.
Oh my God, he's the the
He's the
Rancor
Sarlacc.
guy. No, he's the Rancor.
Oh, right.
Wrangler.
Yeah, he is.
That's
He
awesome.
fucking is.
Oh my god, that's funny.
One of the most cathartic performances in all of science fiction.
Where you kind of feel bad for him. Yeah.
The saddest moment in all of Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somehow.
They killed the only thing he cared about.
I was so filled with glee and delight when he gets snakified or vampirized or whatever, and and even as an undead creature, his like new contact lens eye is still
also-
cockeyed off to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great.
I thought that was very funny.
It's also just like I like a movie that has like Hugh Grant and Peter Capaldi's characters. Like, there's no real reason for them to like want to hang out or like each other in any way. Not that they're like that they're written to be opposed. They're just like unrelated
There's
people.
nothing in common, yeah.
And for them to be like, oh, you want to also understand what's going on here. We like there isn't a discussion about like whether or not we need to work together. It's just like this is what people do because of a problem that we're facing. And it's just you could have easily had Hugh Grant be more of like a foppish, like not interested, doesn't believe them kind of thing, but how quickly he comes on board and is like doing the dirty work with them, and it becomes kind of a Scooby-Doo group, you know?
Yeah. Well, and to me, that's the most Bram Stoker part of all of this. Like in Dracula, when you have the gang of dudes all trying to track down Dracula and save Mina, and it's like you have, you know, a nobleman, a lawyer,
Gunslinger?
a cowboy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
gunslinger?
a cowboy, a crazy German dude, and a doctor, and they like sort of cross class, cross everything they have in common. They all sort of get together to be, you know, these like action hero dudes, and that sort of and I believe in the book, Angus's character is a much more like a Doctor or Abraham Van Helsing type character, where he's sort of older and more scientific and trying to sort of break this thing down by, you know, with his sort of like gotten knowledge over time. That's where the mongoose element gets added in.
Is that what that animal is?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I kind of assumed, but I also was like, I thought a mongoose looked more ferrety.
slender.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, more
slender.
weasel. I mean, they're weasels.
Yeah.
And
This
probably,
one looked more woodchuck or groundhog. It was a little,
Yeah,
it was
like
a little
beavery.
fluffy.
I mean, they
Yeah.
might have just gone outside and grabbed one. Honestly,
They all look the same.
Yeah.
No one's gonna know.
who fucking cares?
Back to Lady Sylvia, just the insanity of how sexualized and dominatrixy a lot of her scenes are is just fun and funny. Like what she does to that hitchhiker kid.
Yeah.
Justice for Kevin, guys.
Yeah,
I feel so fucking bad for that guy.
He was
feel
just
pretty bad.
he's just a hitchhiker.
He's just a dude, just a Boy
Just
Scout.
a guy. Yeah. Did the British have Boy Scouts?
I mean, they had at least there was one guy dressed up like one going for a hike.
He sure looked like one. I couldn't tell. I was like, is this a Mountie? But I guess that's
think
Canadian.
that's-
So,
Yeah.
but no, yeah, poor Kevin got done dirty. But I also it goes back to the end of the movie. Does hinge on what is perhaps the first depiction of a strap-on in a
in a mainstream
feature film?
in a mainstream movie.
Boy.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
know.
not willing to do that research.
It's frustratingly sharp. That's all I'll say.
Well, also that.
Well, and there is
yeah.
that one dream sequence, and we need to talk about the dream sequences at some point because
Oh, how abrupt and insane the first one is, where it's suddenly like Jesus on the cross, surrounded by fire and being strangled by a snake. Like, it's crazy.
As nuns get raped by Roman centurions.
And
like-
Sylvia is there, but they green screened her out. But
that was shot on
Yes.
video, right? Like that had to have
think
been
so.
shot on video,
it looks very like
It
MTV.
looks like it. Yeah.
which is for 1988 is bonkers because
Yeah.
I mean, video wasn't new technology at that point, but it's certainly like we weren't in the digital era of it, I have no idea how they did. I'm going to do a deep dive on how they did this, because
all I know is they green screened her, but she had green on her eyes.
Yeah.
So there are parts of, and they just didn't give a fuck. They just like went for it.
That was
and
part of it.
Looks
I mean,
crazy. I don't think that's on purpose. I can't imagine that's on purpose.
No, it's totally on purpose. It's totally on purpose.
Oh boy.
Have you ever sat down at a video switcher and fucked around?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's what that is. I mean, like, it's like somebody pulled a weird key, and they were playing video on like the bottom layer, and they're like, we can see straight through her. Like, this is some dream sequence shit, right? Yeah, totally.
No, but do you think they filmed it to have that look like that, or they went okay?
Yes,
I
I think that all of the dream sequences are designed to a T and are exactly what they wanted them to look like.
Most of the effects.
I have no
sure,
proof
right?
of this. I just they're so specific that, and they're so specifically designed around video technology of the time, which I can say with some authority because that's the equipment that I learned on in college.
Yeah.
That they were designed to have that look and to do shit you can't do in film, like like the one scene where Hugh Grant is walking. He's in a uniform of some kind. It's when he has like the
plane
dream thing.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where he's walking, and there's some kind of background. I forget what it is, and he's obviously like matted in, which is a different kind of technique from like video layers. Like that's film. That's like film special effects. The layering that they do in the other dream sequences, specifically the ones that are like they have the sort of like Roman early Catholicism imagery around it, are designed with layers in mind, which is very much a video, especially a digital video idea. Because like film is one plane. So like when they mat something out in film, they basically have to make a unexposed portion of the film that's, say like Hugh Grant's walking across the frame. You have to have an unexposed sort of stick figure of a guy walking across the frame when you make that, and then expose it with Hugh Grant walking across the frame. In video, you can play a bunch of different video sources at the same time and mix them together. So like when in that sort of third sequence where the older sister is she's making the phone call, and she sort of like falls out of her trance, and she looks down at the ring, and within the dream sequence that ring sort of rushes forward into the camera, for lack of a better word. Like that's very much a video technology thing, and I'm fascinated by how they did that, B, why they did that.
Yeah,
probably because they could. Like it feels like they were just fucking around.
Well, there's that,
well,
but
the
it's
whole
also
plane dream sequence, I don't really get what we're supposed to be learning from any of that.
Hugh Grant is horny.
Yeah. Probably.
The movie just assumes we're all horny.
True.
Like,
It's a very horny movie, and you have to be along for the ride.
It's a horny movie, and it's not a very sexy movie.
Yeah.
There's a couple moments, but for the most part, it's a little bit like the Grace Jones dance in Vamp.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
There is a lot of connective tissue between Vamp and this movie, I think.
Matt and I knew when we were thinking of these, this is why we split them up, because this is very in the Vamp camp,
It would be a fun double feature, though.
They are sort of like across the pond cousins.
Yeah.
What year was Vamp again? 89? 87? 88 as well?
Vamp, no, I'm sorry. Vamp was
86?
86? I think 86. I'll put money down on that.
86, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Vamp and the Lair of the White Worm are both like very vibes based movies.
Oh yeah.
That are very much rooted in the cultures from which they come. Vamp is very much an American movie. Lair of the White Worm is very much a British movie from both like in all senses of sensibilities. Like those characters from Vamp don't play in a British movie in the same way.
Would you say
they're
all
also
sense and sensibility?
And sea monsters.
It's also, they're both genre comedies that are not satires, which is actually kind of a niche thing in and of itself. You know?
Yeah.
You don't really think about that. Usually if you're going to combine a genre with a comedy, you're making fun of said genre. Instead, this is just kind of like, there's a commentary to it. There's sort of like you're leaning into sort of the tropes like we talked about on the Vamp episode. But for the most part, this is like, I don't know, absurdist in a certain way. And there is they play with there's just generally British humor throughout a lot of it, especially in some of the more like witty repartee. I think especially that first scene at the party with Peter Capaldi and Hugh Grant, just kind of having that long conversation. There's a lot of like, I don't know. I can see like the way they make fun of that kind of like bouncy dialogue in like Garth Marenghi's Dark Place or something. You know,
well, I think there's actually a ton of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, but I also think it's like back in the day, everyone has been to one of those parties. And it's just funny to have two guys talking by the food table, eating weird and ridiculous things, just doing exposition at each other. Like, I think that is like contextual to a time and place, and that is why that is funny. I have no idea if it's executed well or not, but like I could see somebody back in 1988 being like, "We've all been there," and we don't always get a chance to talk about like excavations or like set up a vampire plot. So yeah, I think that it is trying to be funny in those places.
It's also like one of those scenes where it's like you're at a party and you're stuck talking to a guy you don't necessarily dislike, but you also don't really want to talk with, and you got to go through you don't know.
You're like making small talk. Yeah.
You're like, whose husband did you say? Who's Cheryl? I don't even. Yeah.
Who do you know?
Wait, you're the lord of this house. Oh, yeah.
I liked the build around Hugh Grant's character. His whole thing. Peter Capaldi is a pretty standard sort of like a Van Helsing-y dude a little bit, even though he kind of like disappears for a lot of the second half and then kind of comes back with bagpipes, which I don't know if they necessarily set up, but other than the fact that he's Scottish.
If it's made in
did they set up the grenade? I can't remember.
No, not at all.
Not in the least. No.
I like it more because of that.
I mean, I think the joke
like
is he can reach into his sporran and pull out whatever he needs for.
It's the most Monty Python thing in the world to just like Looney Tunes a grenade out of your kilt. Like, where does one procure a grenade in the first place?
Well, if we're going to talk about Peter Capaldi, I know on this side of the house, I stan a Scottish king.
Sure. Yeah.
As a person of Scottish extraction, it did my heart well to have the big hero moment. Have fucking Peter Capaldi show up and just start wailing on the bagpipes wearing a kilt. Just like, what's up, motherfuckers?
It's also just a good hero save, because in that moment you're like, oh, she's also like, she's being chased down in the catacombs by the snake cop and an actual snake on the other side, and you're like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this is a character that could easily get dispatched right here. It seems like we're killing everybody. Like, go for it. And then you start to hear bagpipes playing, and Peter Capaldi's like kind of figured out one or two things more than the audience at that point, and has a bit of a plan. And it's just like I love a good like surprising save, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And I love how he lures the cop to that like weather vane thing or whatever it is, and how many times they circle it as he's trying to like line up the kill.
and you can watch Peter Capaldi try to modulate like what's going to attract the snake vampire to what's going to repel the snake vampire. Like, we don't want to get him too close. We don't want to get him too far.
Well, and also that he runs out of breath in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Famously hard to do in a bagpipe. All the breath is in the bag. But I'm not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Never...
Yeah. You blow into the pipe to fill up the bag, and then you squeeze it with your arm to get the air to go out and through the pipes.
If you put a bagpipe in my hands right now, I could not figure out where to blow. Like, I just don't, or what to hold. Like, nobody I don't know. There's like 4 orifices. I'd pick wrong every time.
I mean, it is something of.
Well, that's funny because if you go look outside your door right now, we have a bagpipe waiting for you to try just that right now.
Oh my God. I thought you were gonna say you have someone with a giant strap-on dildo. That's waiting.
Well, if you can't play the bagpipe, guess what's coming next?
Which also screws on weirdly. Did you notice that?
I did notice that.
Yeah. What was the first time she used it? Is it with the Boy Scout kid? I can't remember.
No. Well, so she uses it to do a weird, unexplained virgin test on the sister character whose name I don't remember.
Oh no.
Which is really weirdly upsetting. But also, there's a dream sequence where a bunch of dudes. I'm sorry, I don't know any of these characters' names.
I don't know.
But a bunch of dudes that are wearing those sort of run on and stab one of them to death with in the dream sequence, but with the strap on, with multiple strap ons, which is actually a really upsetting image. Actually,
it seems like this movie is there any element of sex that isn't tied up with violence in this movie? It feels like they're generally combined every time there's an instance of it.
Yeah, it's very Catholic in that way.
Well, and a lot of like the snake as phallus imagery.
Mm-hmm.
Like
there's some of that. Yeah,
there's a lot of that. I mean, there's a whole dream sequence where, well, and when the mother, who apparently has been held captive, is watching the TV series of the belly dancer just like deep throating a python. Literally. Mm-hmm. So it's very weird.
We didn't really touch on that. You almost missed that those 2 girls are sisters if you're not listening closely.
and you do miss that the mom is not them too. Because I definitely got confused as to who was who.
Oh yeah, when you first see that woman there, because you've never met the mom. You first see that woman, you're like, and the sister's obviously been captured and you're like, you expect it to be the sister, and you're like, oh, that she looks different. Is that a different actress? What are they going for? Yeah, it's a little strange, and the whole thing is just like a fever dream. It is a crazy ride to go on, and it the first time especially you watch it, you're just struggling to find what to hold on to.
And I don't know that it's trying to like say anything. I don't know that there's like a deep-seated message behind everything.
No, it's just a good little romp, I guess. I don't know. I love that cave that they shoot at, whatever that is. Great cave entrance, gigantic.
Oh yeah, the one where you like see the background through like the entrance, through the openings.
And it's like a giant cave that's also on a hilltop. So like out the mouth of the cave, you just see this vista for like miles and miles and miles. I don't know where that is, but that's a cool spot.
Apparently, it's called Thor's Cave in Derbyshire.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Derbyshire. Is that English? I honestly realizing there's not much more to kind of touch on.
Well, actually, I'm curious, Frank. You have been a bit of an evangelist for the Lair of the White Worm for a couple of years. I think you were really talking about it last year when this first came up. I'm very curious what your journey of the White Worm has been.
We just threw it on cold. We had never heard of it. I think Amanda had probably looked up like lesser known Halloween movies. So some list she found online of like some movies that we were kind of like just getting one Halloween, maybe 2 years ago. We were just getting a little like tired of our usual go-tos and we wanted to just throw a curveball in there. So we put it on. I don't even think we looked up who was in it. I think we just pressed play and didn't really know what we were going to experience with it. So that it was just kind of like, I think we started off on the right note with it. And each time we've watched it, it's been like, it gets better as you go through because the like absurdist stuff comes to the surface. You can kind of like laugh most of the way through the movie. And I think it wants you to. So that's kind of been my vibe with it. And also just like, I don't know, seeing Peter Capaldi and Hugh Grant as like really well-formed young actors, like doing all this, you can kind of see where they're going to go with everything.
Yeah. What was the experience like watching it cold? Like you said, you didn't know who was in it. So
like literally the credits started up and we're like, oh, Hugh Grant, oh, Peter Capaldi. And like, it was just like one of those. And it was just, we didn't really know where it was going. We didn't know. I think we went in with like low expectations, like we're going to turn it off soon. And then it just kept getting weirder. And it was one of those ones where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen next in this movie, that you can't actually look away from the screen. So that was kind of the best way to go through it. Where like there was no buildup. No one had sort of said anything about, is this good or bad? And we were just kind of like tasting everything fresh.
Speaking of, is it good or bad? Would you care to guess what Roger Ebert gave it?
Oh man, dude, it could be 1 or 3.5 stars. I don't know. Because he only did like a 4-star system.
He was at a 4 stars, yeah. He gave it 2 out of 4 stars and called it a respectable B-grade monster movie.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
I don't disagree.
There really wasn't the reclamation of B movies that there is today in his heyday. Like that's kind of the kindest he would be for a lot of those schlocky movies, you know? Like it took until like the late 90s, early 2000s for The Thing to have any level of respect, you know?
This isn't The Thing, though.
No, it's not. That's 2 out of 4 is totally fine. I have no qualms with that. This is definitely like an acquired taste and not necessarily one worth acquiring in any regard. I just think it's a fun, very like it's one of those weird pieces of music from a country you barely know where it is on the map. And you're like, oh, that's kind of like not what I thought music could do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll listen to it again, but that was like an experience that I'm going to remember. You know, it's like that.
You can get it on DVD for $10.35 on Amazon.
Is that the furthest it went? That's such a good metric. Like how many formats of home video?
No, you can get it on Blu-ray. There's a Blu-ray cut.
I would imagine this is like one of those like boutique Blu-ray places has a nice, you know.
There's like a couple of dozen people for whom this is their favorite movie.
Well, I was also thinking as I was watching it, I'm like, some poor motherfucker, this was their sexual awakening.
Oh, I think a lot of folks, yeah.
When she emerges from that basket.
Oh, yeah. That's great. The fact that like she's in a basket rather than a coffin. Like they really go in on the snake thing.
Well, then that goes back to the question, is this actually a vampire movie? Because they're not vampires.
No, I mean, that's the thing. They're not vampires, but they act enough like vampires that I think it counts as a vampire movie. If that makes sense.
The fact that they're turning them by like fang bites.
Mm-hmm. They are biting people and turning them. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, but I mean, it also just does not give a fuck about like lore in any regard. Even still, like what you really don't know what the skull is because the worm you see later. Are there 2 worms? Like, what is that?
That's true. They do make not a joke, but they do sort of talk about like
the cut in half,
cutting a worm in half, and the implication being you get 2 new worms. So maybe it's the side of the worm that survived being cut in half by the night all those
I'll take that.
hundreds of years ago. And it's taken this long to fully regenerate into a full.
Well, that's the other thing. I was watching it this time. I'm like, why is this happening now? Like, why is the plot happening right now?
Yeah,
it's not because they find the skull.
No, but it does feel like she needs to like sacrifice to the worm enough to stay immortal was the implication I got. And so, particularly virgins, like she has a hard time finding virgins.
Well, and she makes a big distinction between sacrificing and feeding. Like, well, she'll feed anybody to the worm, but she really needs a virgin for that good sacrifice vibe.
Right.
Which I mean, I feel like
basically she's not like getting the worm ready to like unleash. It's just going to stay in there, right?
Yeah,
that's the vibe.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm sure if they had 1 or 2 more drafts of the script, they could have like talked about him reemerging for his sort of, you know, Lovecraftian reign of terror.
Yeah.
Apparently Lovecraft had some things to say about this book that were not very nice. But
Lovecraft had things not nice to say?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't even racist. It was more just sort of general literary criticism.
See, now that's surprising.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
We got to do a Dracula at some point.
Are we doing a Dracula next?
Are we?
Connor? Is this a lead-in to your selection.
I was setting you guys up for a thing.
Connor, should we do a Dracula?
Before I start that bit, Frank, is there anything else you want to say about?
No, that's it. Now I want to hear about your Dracula.
Connor, should we do a Dracula?
Well, now that you mention it, Peter, as much as I've enjoyed our unconventional vampire spooky season of this year, I'm feeling a dearth of Dracula. And I think I have a piece for us to watch next that will scratch that Dracula itch for all of us. It's a classic film from a while ago. You may have heard of it. It's 1999's Wes Craven Presents Dracula 2000.
Wait, it's 1999, but it's called Dracula 2000. I thought it was.
That's just what they did in 1999. It's called
That
shit
is true.
2000
They called
because it was coming. It was around the corner.
Although
like
it does say
Madden.
this says it was released in 2000.
Fuck.
Oh,
I haven't done my research
Okay.
yet. But yeah, I think we should watch Dracula 2000 because we need more Dracula this year, and also because I need you guys to tell me every single thought that you guys have about Dracula 2000.
Excellent. I will do that for you, Connor.
Thank you, Peter.
Connor, how scary is this movie?
oh, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine. I was about to say fucking
think-
terrifying, but no, you're fine.
I think the dream sequences in Lair of the White Worm are scarier than
Yeah,
anything.
if you can make it through the layer of the White Worm unscathed, I think you'll be just fine with Dracula 2000.
Yeah.
Slightly hornier though, so.
I was about to say, wait,
Well-
Dracula 2000 is hornier?
Mm-hmm.
It's sexier. I don't know if it's hornier.
True. You do have to make
It's
a very
the other
specific
side of the
distinction.
coin. Yeah. Wait, Peter. So you don't know anything about this?
No, I know nothing about Dracula 2000.
Oh, it's a nice guilty pleasure one for me. I like it.
Excellent. I'm looking up the director's
Yeah.
film
I don't think it
resume.
has one.
The director. Well, I'll tell. Spoiler for the next episode. I lived let's see, Dracula 2000 was 24 years ago. I lived 24 years of my life believing that Wes Craven directed Wes Craven Presents Dracula 2000. Turns out, no, he did not.
No,
He did that a couple of times. I think I watched a movie called They. I think that he also did that too. That burned me.
Yeah, that was also the beginning of the era of like famous good director has executive produced this kind of schlocky movie.
it's like
Yeah.
Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim
Yeah.
Burton did not direct The Nightmare Before Christmas, and
No.
a lot of people have assumed that over the years. So
Yeah.
I think it's in the same vein as that.
It is.
All right. Well, we're in for a treat.
A trick or treat.
Damn it.
John Dobson went a fishing once, a fishing in the weir. He caught a fish up on his hook, he thought looked mighty queer. Now what the kind of fish it was, John Dobson couldn't tell. But he didn't like the look of it, so he threw it down a well.